Hello everyone. It is 11:46 by my calculation, so let's get started with this next session. Welcome everyone, really nice to see you here. Thank you, Aviona. Nice to get a wave from the chat because I can't see any of you at this precise moment. Hi, I'm Kate Hamilton. I am a coordinator for the Wales inquiry of the Food Farming and Countryside Commission. I do that alongside being Programme Director of Renew Wales. So across those two roles, I'm concerned with climate change and action for sustainability and the role that food farming and land use plays in all of that. So this is the month that COP26 should have been happening, and because of the pandemic, it's not happening till this time next year, which is obviously a worry and a tragedy in some regards, but does mean that we have a whole extra year to build up to this big decision-making moment around climate action globally, and it's happening in Glasgow. So, amongst many interesting things that are happening in that lead up, Nourish in Scotland have been developing some really interesting ideas around how to make sure that food and food systems and food production is present in those discussions. It's obviously such an important consideration. Our food system is both a massive driver of our current emissions crisis, but it's also a huge driver of change and potential for change. So really what we're trying to explore is how to seize that potential. So they have some really interesting work going on. I'm going to let them introduce it. If I can hand you over to Ritchie from Nourish, they will talk a bit about their what they're currently doing and what they're kicking off, and what they're encouraging us in Wales to get involved in. And at the end of the session, excuse me, at the end of the session, we'll come back to thinking about what do we want to do in Wales? What do people in this room want to kick off to stimulate discussion and thinking leading up to COP26 around our food system? So, Pete, over to you.
Thank you, Kate, and hello everybody. It's really nice to see you. I was just saying this morning, I was at the last year's conference in Aberystwyth this time of year, and it feels like so long ago, that year. What a strange year it's been. I'm not going to say very much because Sophie and Deanna are going to talk more about the particular elements of the work we're doing. But as Kate says, we've initiated this thing called the Glasgow process, and it's got two big elements from our point of view. One is a declaration on food and climate, which we're encouraging a lot of subnational governments around the world to sign, and a very specific process of dialogue between farmers and cities. But Sophie's going to introduce and say a bit more about the Glasgow Declaration. So I'll hand over to you, Sophie.
Thank you, Pete, and thanks everyone. I think though, before we jump into that, we wanted to just welcome everyone to the meeting because it's going to be quite an interactive session. We're going to be talking and listening to each other. So we just wanted to kind of ground everyone into the session with a long welcome, and I'll leave it to my colleague Deanna to start that before we kind of go into introducing ourselves and the project in more detail. So over to you, Deanna.
Hi everyone, it's lovely to be here with you today. And so, as Sophie said, we just want to start with this welcome, and I shall pass over to Fionn.
We want to welcome everyone into the room. Hoffem groesawu pawb yn yr ystafell.
Welcome to those who've been with us before.
And welcome to those who are new.
Welcome to those who know someone else in the room.
And welcome to those who are seeing all these faces for the first time.
Croeso i'r holl wahanol ieithoedd. Welcome to all the different languages.
Welcome Welsh, Danish, Spanish, French, English, Flemish, Nahuatl. Anyone want to welcome any other languages present?
Welcome to those who identify as non-binary, female, male.
And welcome to those who haven't decided yet.
Welcome to those who identify as black, as brown, as indigenous, as white.
Croeso i'r rheini, mae eu hanes yn gwneud hi'n amhosib gwybod, and welcome to those whose history makes it impossible to know.
Welcome to those who grow food for a living.
And welcome to those who've never worked the soil.
And welcome to everyone else who's here with us today and who might see or not see, hear or not hear in each other's screens and through each other's microphones.
Welcome to everyone's families and friends in whatever form they might be present with us today.
Welcome to the cats, the dogs, the spiders and the other beings here today. Croeso i'r cathod, y cwn, y pryfed cop a'r bodau eraill yma heddiw.
And to all the different knowledges present, emotional and rational knowledge, ancestral knowledge, non-human knowledge, embodied knowledge.
Welcome to the thoughts and the ideas that will be generated here today, whether they stay with us throughout or whether they fly away somewhere else.
Welcome to silence.
Welcome to pauses.
Welcome to sounds and excitement. Croeso i'r synnau a chyffro.
Welcome to confusion.
And welcome to all the other feelings that will join us here today.
Welcome to those who have been involved in building better food systems for some time.
And welcome to those who just joined.
A hoffai rhywun groesawu unrhyw beth neu unrhyw un arall. Would anyone like to welcome anything or anyone else?
I notice a welcome to the language German in the chat. Welcome.
Welcome, German.
Okay, thank you everyone in the team. Kate, do you want to do introductions to us and the team before we dive into the projects, or shall we just...
Please introduce yourselves.
Perfect. We can introduce ourselves when we kind of get started. When we take over. So my name is Sophie. I joined Nourish Scotland earlier this year. And for those of you who don't know us, Nourish Scotland is a Scotland-based food organisation working to integrate, democratise and localise food policy. And I coordinate our COP26 projects. And our title for this session, using COP26 to build momentum for food policies which help climate, nature and people. And our proposal for how to do this is what we call the Glasgow process, which is aimed at involving actors who normally do not have a seat at the table in international negotiations in discussing sustainable food policies at COP. So just to go back to basics a bit, COP26, when we talk about that, we're talking about the 26th conference of the parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It's the decision-making body of that convention, which aims to prevent dangerous human interference in the climate. And at COP, the parties, the national states, are tasked with reviewing the actions that are being taken by the members towards achieving that aim. It meets every year, and as Kate mentioned, the pandemic has postponed COP this year, so we're now looking at COP26 being held in Glasgow next year in November, so just a year from now. And we've got that year to kind of build momentum for bringing food, local authorities and farmers into the bigger picture. So leading up to COP, countries around the world, including the UK after leaving the EU, are setting out how they're going to contribute to the goals of the Paris Agreement, to restricting warming to 2 degrees or further below. And they're designing their so-called national determined contributions, which sets out how countries are going to do this, but they rarely include food. And that is despite the fact that, as Kate outlined before, our food systems are major. They contribute about 1/4 or 1/3 of our greenhouse gas emissions globally, and they drive environmental degradation, and which causes further climate change and inequalities. And despite the fact that at the same time, and as many of you will know, our food systems and the way we do food holds immense potential as climate change solution and for building resilient and sustainable communities. And so the Glasgow process really is about bringing food to COP and about bringing local actors to COP. And yeah, so to put food at the negotiations table, so to say, because without doing so, we won't be able to face this momentous task of bridging the gap between what countries are currently doing and the kind of systems transformations that are required to tackle the climate and nature emergency. And we want to do that through creating a more people-centered dynamic at COP. And that's, for us, is all about bringing local actors into the negotiations, and that is local authorities, that is devolved administrations, and that is the people involved in our food systems, so particularly farmers. Local actors often drive the most innovative and progressive food systems solutions. They're also more closely connected to citizens and communities, and they're more agile and able to implement the appropriate solutions to the challenges that they face in their places. So one way we're doing this, and I'll just share my screen to show you, if I have it open, give me 1 second. One way we're doing this is through the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration. Apologies while I sort out my Zoom. Here, so one strand of the Glasgow process is the Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration, which is a declaration for subnational governments of all sizes. I'll post this link in the chat so you can go and have a read of the declaration itself and the accompanying documents and learn more about it. But the declaration is really about taking the message from local actors, local governments to COP26 around the fact that we need a food systems approach to climate change, and around the fact that local governments are already tackling the climate emergency with very progressive policies. The declaration also calls on national governments to support this by creating an enabling environment for local action, and to ask national governments to make food part of the NDCs and ensure that this is being taken up at the climate conference. The Glasgow Declaration, as part of that, also calls for more democratized food systems, recognizing that if we are to tackle climate change through a food systems approach, we need a just transition in food and farming, and that requires involving all food systems actors, in particular farmers. And that brings us to the second strand of the Glasgow process, which is what we'll focus on today, and that is the Fork to Farm dialogues, which work to bring local authorities and farmers together, first in around 20 local dialogues that are place-based, taking place across the globe, including several in the UK, and we'll talk more about how to get involved later, but culminating in an international dialogue and an interactive exhibitions of city and farmer partnerships at COP itself in a year's time. And I'll pass on to Fionn and Deanna, my colleagues, to introduce themselves and to give us a bit more detail about that. So Fionn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, diolch Sophie. Fionn ydw I, dwi'n ferch fferm o ganolbarth Cymru, a dwi'n rhan o'r gwaith mae Nourish Scotland yn wneud ar gyfer COP26. Hi everyone, it's great to join you. My name's Fionn and I'm a young farmer, part of a family farm from mid Wales, and I'm part of Nourish Scotland's COP26 activities as part of my role with the Rural Youth Project, a steering committee member of that youth organisation. And so to dialogues and why they're important. There's a growing understanding, as has been said, that the way we do food and farming is detrimental to the people, the planet, and to our common future, and that change is needed to make farming part of the solution and not the problem. Globally, food systems are changing, but global changes are enacted locally. Every food system is unique and changes need to be context specific. There's a need for better, smarter, local solutions. As Sophie mentioned, some national governments worldwide are increasingly taking local action to tackle these challenges. I know this from a personal experience, and I know locally where we farm, that farmers and food producers are often left out of discussions and policy-making processes that impact their lives and livelihoods. Many farmers see the need to change, but they require supportive policy and fair returns to be able to do that. Also, long supply chains mean that farmers often feel disconnected from their local population, from local government, the nearest town, village even perhaps, or city. Deep disagreements between stakeholders have hampered efforts to encourage rapid and joint actions to transform our food systems. I'll switch to Welsh now, but I'll say what I'm saying again in English for those that don't understand. Yma yng Nghymru, mae ffermwyr yn wynebu dyfodol ansicr, gyda'r newidiadau mwyaf mewn polisi, masnach ar farchnad ers degawdau ar droed. I ni gyd tra bod newid mawr yn y ffordd mae pobl yn byw, gweithio, dysgu ac felly'n bwyta, o ganlyniad i'r pandemig a newidiadau i ddealltwriaeth pobl o fwyd o ganlyniad i ymgyrchoedd byd-eang, sydd weithiau'n gamarweiniol. Bydd partneriaeth yn hanfodol i oroesi'r amser cythryblus heb os sydd o'n blaenau, a sicrhau trosglwyddiad cyfiawn i ffordd o ffermio a chynhyrchu bwyd sydd yn deg i bawb a'r amgylchedd. Welsh farmers face an uncertain future, with the biggest changes in policy, trade and market for decades afoot. All this while there is a major change in the way people live, work, learn, and therefore eat as a result of the pandemic, and changes to people's understanding of food as a result of global campaigns, some misleading. Partnership will be crucial to surviving the turbulent time that undoubtedly lies ahead, and ensuring that a just transition to a way of farming and producing food is fair to everyone and the environment. Across the world and here in Wales, dialogues similar to the one that Nourish Scotland are curating are taking place. Creative and collaborative local solutions with cities, local authorities, towns and farmers coming together and asking, how can we help each other? Participating in a dialogue is an opportunity to share a safe space with different perspectives, to understand power relations, build trust, share generational and local knowledge, and consider the impact that we have on one another in the food system. Working with people who do not share the same interest, values and vocabulary isn't always easy, but a dialogue based on respect is essential for covering more ground and increasing influence, combining efforts, sharing resources and enriching the discourse with diverse voices and experiences. Participating in the Farm to Fork dialogue and other dialogues offers an opportunity to participate in local dialogues, but also to join a community of local dialogues and a global dialogue at the 26th UN Climate COP in Glasgow in 2021, all with the same principles at their core, designed to build understanding and trust and to strengthen the foundations of projects and partnerships in future. Diolch, thank you. I'll pass over to Diana.
Hi everyone, thank you Fiona and thank you Sophie. It's lovely to be here with you today. My name is Diana and I also work with Nourish Scotland. I've also been working now for almost a year. I'm really happy to be here today. So I'm gonna talk to you a bit more about the methodology for the Fork to Farm dialogues. So the Fork to Farm project aims to provide a framework through which long-lasting relationships between farmers and cities can be built and sustained. We believe that through a relationship building approach, it is more likely that farmers and cities will understand how to help each other. As we all know, forming relationships is an organic process, not a step-by-step recipe. It is also a fun and sometimes scary process, and it is a process that is determined by local contexts, so we do not expect to create a formula that can simply be replicated from one place to the next. To support facilitators through this process, we will be hosting a series of sessions, working with Go Deep Scotland, an organization that uses creative methods like games to bring together groups to work in community, and thus is grounded in relationship building. To build these relationships, we have co-created a set of guiding principles for the dialogues. These principles include creating spaces that work within the framework of a just transition and respect for human rights, ensure diverse participation of people, of knowledge systems, of food practices, and other things, to ensure equity and equal participation, and to work with and towards sustainable and resilient food systems that are local-led and context-specific. To begin building this support, as Nourish for the facilitators and with our partners in the steering group, we have co-created a framework that aims to create a space to share knowledge, questions, concerns, challenges, and opportunities that might arise throughout this relationship building process. It is a framework that will continue to be co-created throughout the project with all facilitators. We have termed this framework the landscape of possibilities. So I'm going to share my screen with you now just so you get an idea of what it looks like. It might be a bit overwhelming at first, but I shall walk you through it. So can I just get a few nods if people are seeing the landscape? Yes, okay. And my Adobe is doing funny things, so I hope it works. Cool. So to give you a taste of what we mean when we say the landscape of possibilities. So the Ford to Farm dialogues are represented by these fireside chats in the middle. The campfires around which people will gather to build relationships. Yet to start the fire and to keep it going, different resources will be needed, and this can be gathered from other places. So the other places that these resources can be gathered from, for example, we have the River of Invitations down here. So in this area, if you decide to host a local dialogue, one of the first questions you're likely to ask yourself is who should be invited? So this is a place for facilitators to think this through. How should people be invited? How do we make it worthwhile for everyone involved? The river is a metaphor for how invitations might flow from one person or group to another. And like a river, people might flow away from the chats and back to them. The Forest of Ancestral Ghosts is up here. So this place exists as somewhere to encourage facilitators to think about things that might be invisible, but can be lingering around and influencing the dialogue in different ways. For example, did something happen in the past in a particular area that will influence how different people involved in the dialogues perceive each other? So here, these post-its that you can see are people who are already involved in the project and have already been to some of these places and begun thinking of some of these questions. So for example, someone here shared, in South Africa, a history of expropriation of land with people being moved off their land is likely to haunt these dialogues. While someone else says, well, we also have a lot to learn from our ancestors. We need to bring their wisdoms back to the fire. So this is just to give you a taste of the kind of framework and kind of approach that we will be using. Because of time, it's not possible for me to take you through everything, but hopefully this gives you an idea. And just to highlight how the framework also aims to have this organic approach are the places we don't know. Recognizing that as we go through this process, probably other issues, other challenges, and other places will emerge. And it's something that we will continue co-creating throughout the project. Also, the footsteps show how we might be going to one place, we might be revisiting another one again, and we might even have to double down on our tracks throughout this process. So I'm going to stop sharing now. So apart from supporting facilitators by co-constructing this framework in a series of online sessions, these sessions will also be a space for everyone involved to share and try out practical methods that can be used to build relationships and work in community in the context of food and climate change. And now we're going to try out one of these methods in this session. So I hope you are all in for it. It's meant to be fun, hopefully. So, and we want to see what we can learn. So the idea is that we're going to be going into breakout rooms. But before we do that, I just want each of you to take 2 minutes and to reflect on the prompt. What if you woke up in the year 2050 and your dream food was a reality? What would your day look like? I'm going to repeat that. What if you woke up in the year 2050 and your dream food system was a reality? What would your day look like? You can imagine. You would wake up. Where would you go? Do you have a job? What does your job look like? Is it still a job? So I'm going to give you some time now. And let me know if you have any questions on the chat. It's always nice to come back from breakout groups and see more faces than we saw before. So welcome everyone.
I agree.
Welcome back, everyone.
I want to hear what Martin's final thought was, if he wants to chuck it in, but maybe not. That was really interesting.
But okay, most of the
they spent time talking to the farmers in their own homes at their kitchen table, breakfast table. And as time went on in the interview, they more and more opened up to their kind of modern guarded position, to following, to it being volunteering, how they got to the position they were in this current time, much more commercially minded, much more intensive, and how they were, say, 30 years ago when they started. It was along those lines, and how the farmers became much more human, much more, and that was the thing. So that's aligned with Mike's point that he made. Other Mike's, yeah. Will that do? Do you get what I meant? Did I explain it right?
Great, thanks. Yeah, good. So carry on with the talk now.
Lovely. Sophie, is it you or?
Yeah, I'm happy to kind of just do a little reflection, and yeah. So welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone got to contribute. We just wanted to reflect on this session now that we're all back in the main room, and there's a lot of us. So unfortunately, I won't be able to invite everyone to share a reflection, but maybe someone from each breakout room. I'm not sure how many breakout rooms we actually had in total, but just if you keep an eye on, has someone else from your room contributed, and then let the floor open to someone else. And the thing we would like to hear from you, reflecting on those last 20 minutes, is, did you hear something you think you otherwise wouldn't have heard? Did you hear something that you think was brought about by coming into a room and really actively listening to other people's dreams for the future? Did you hear something you wouldn't otherwise have heard? So I'll invite someone to come forward and share their reflection, and then let's see if we can just do it a bit organically. Mike.
Yeah, me? Yeah, I guess I got a stronger reaction against the use of technology and possibly robotics in 2050 than I was expecting. I mean, it's 30 years from now. Go 30 years back and look at technology. There's obviously going to be use of technology, and yeah, I think a kind of reluctance to accept that. Maybe that was surprising. Not surprising. Something. Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. Would anyone else like to jump in and just share something they heard they wouldn't otherwise have heard?
I'd like to.
Could you say your name?
Yes. Hello, Marcus.
Can you say your name first so I can spotlight? Pardon?
Marcus Braun.
Oh, yeah,
Marcus
I know.
Braun. Hi. Yeah, I've heard something interesting in our breakout group about the Well-Being of Future Generations Act, and there were these people trying to fight an intensive chicken farm that completely contradicts a lot of the things in there. And it again brought home to me how it's similar to what the current government, British government, is doing. They do a lot of talking and a lot of aims and goals, and then there is not the action with it. And again, it brought home that often the economics overrides these long-term goals of sustainability, well-being. The short-term economics override many decisions in local areas. You know, if somebody comes and says, oh, I put up a big thing which brings in 100 jobs, then a lot of people say, yes, it's better than looking at the long-term thing. So, yeah, and I was a bit saddened by that. So that act wasn't used to stop this intensive, chicken farm proposal. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Would anyone else like to share a reflection? Something that stood out to you? Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Sophie. I said this in a group, but I was hugely struck in our breakout group by just the love that people have for the land they're living on, and how much they want to make a living from that land, and they want to be in connection with that land, and how much pride there is in that future. And I think it really made me reflect a bit on where we are in Scotland, you know, because the other participants in the group were all living in your beautiful country of Wales. And just sometimes it feels as if you have that, you know, deep connection with that land that in some parts of Scotland we seem to have lost, that we don't seem to have that same sort of positive view about how, you know, living in our rural areas can have a bright future. So I had a very bright future for living in the rural areas of Wales, and that was great. I wouldn't have heard that otherwise. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. I'm aware I can't actually see everyone, so if anyone wants to just jump in and unmute themselves, feel free. And let's say your name so Jane can spotlight you.
Yeah. Okay.
Please.
Patrick from Abergavenny. I was just really excited about the small group. It was wonderful to hear so many people having so many exciting conversations positively about horticulture and veg growing in Wales, because as earlier in the day we heard it was only 0.1% in Wales, but actually there's really a huge amount of stuff going on. And it was just really, I was very lucky to be in a room with so many people having so many positive conversations and feeling that things were really on a roll. So it was very invigorating to hear that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.
I'll put a comment in the chat just sort of saying feel free if you want to just lodge anything else, do put it in the chat. I think in the interest of finishing on time, which we've had a lot of very strict words about, it'd be nice to sort of move from here to thinking about, you know, this was just an experience that suggesting could happen in a kind of dialogue process, but it'd be interesting to hear from Sophie, Deanna, Pete, what else it might go on in these dialogue processes, what else can they entail, so that we can start to think about, okay, here in Wales, what could we make happen, or what would we like to make happen, or what's already happening that might constitute these kinds of spaces where these kinds of dialogues can emerge, particularly over the next year leading up to COP26.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Kate. Maybe I'll start off, and then Pete and Deanna, do feel free to add anything to what I'm sharing. So as Kate was saying, this is just an example of a bit of what a forked farm dialogue would look like. So to reiterate the point of the dialogue, so to try and bring two actors in the food system, so food producers and the cities, which is taken to mean the local authorities, but also a bit more widely, consumers and communities in cities together to create a foundation for partnerships. And so part of that is listening to what are our dreams for the future and the values that underpin that, and try and find synergies, and maybe also find where there's divergence and start a conversation about aligning those visions. But what else it could look like is having a group, so that it's an organic process of designing the methodology for the dialogues. This is the big aim. We have a few pilots going on in Scotland and further afield as well, where the facilitators of the dialogues are bringing together a core group of people who are farmers and who are in the city to kind of form relationships through dialogue, but also through interactions. So we saw the landscape of possibilities before that Deanna presented, of the kind of things you might want to bring into the dialogues, but it would also entail doing things together. So actively undertaking tasks in your community. It could be bringing city authorities to the farms and instigating kind of farm visits, whether we can do that in person or whether it has to be virtually or digitally. It could also be, I think Deanna wrote this out in our plan, kind of cooking a meal together and reflecting on the produce you're including. So something that feels more tangible, undertaking interactions over a period of time that allows you to really reflect. And then we will bring those reflections from the local dialogues, which are really a series of interactions, into a global community of dialogues, allowing the local dialogues to learn from what is taking place in other parts of the country and in other parts of the world as well, and reflect on the kind of themes and issues that come up in those places as well. I'll open up if Pete or Deanna would like to add anything to that.
Just want to say a little bit about, if you like, what the outcome of the dialogues would be. And in the chat, people are saying, well, you know, like, let's have some action. I can understand that. So, but we're not prescribing what the outcomes will be. We just think that there are opportunities for stronger relationships to lead to better partnerships and more creative projects emerging. And just in our small group, you know, Rodri was talking about diversifying on a sheep and beef farm and what it would take to grow veg and who would buy them. And Fionn was talking about the landscape level of thinking about farms and how they could work together in a landscape. And Heather was talking about the new program in the Welsh Government for cooperation and collaboration. And it just seemed there were plenty of openings for Rodri and Fionn and Heather to be talking to the local council, you know, to having farmers and the local council shaping a picture of the future together, because they can't do it on their own. Councils won't manage the land, and the farmers can't create the policies and markets on their own. So I think there are just on those things you thought, well, there's huge possibilities here, and maybe it's all happening already, but certainly our experience in Scotland and different parts of the world is there's still a big gulf often between the things farmers are talking about and the things that local authorities are talking about, and just developing a better common language and a better way of understanding each other would just help in that process. That's what we're thinking.
Thank you, Pete. I think that's right. And I just saw a comment in the chat around this experience of kind of having quite shared views and asking who is not in the room. And that is something that I think is quite integral to the methodology we're hoping to use for the dialogues, is to think very carefully around who actually needs to be part of this conversation and how can we bring some diversity in that, so that we also hear from people who maybe don't normally enter into these spaces and have these conversations. How can we hear from very different farming systems in the same dialogue who are ultimately all needing to tackle similar challenges that might manifest differently in the local space, but that are part of the same challenge. So those are really good points.
So with that in mind, just in the last 10 minutes of the session, 8 minutes of the session, sorry, we're inviting you to sort of have a think about how some kind of dialogue process along the lines that the teams described might add value in your place, in your situation. I mean, if you don't think it would, you can say that too. I think Sophie's going to open a Mentimeter thing. So
yes, I will.
Is in there. So just have a think, and any thoughts that you have about how such a process might add value to your place or the work that you're trying to get done, please share it there.
So can everyone see my screen? Can I get a quick thumbs up from someone that this is showing Menti? All good, perfect. So if you on another tab on your computer or on your phone, you go to menti.com. So just menti.com. It should ask you for a code. If you put in 9979610, you should get an option to answer this question through your device. Would anyone be able to pop that in the chat, the code, just in case that's helpful? So probably one of my team members have already done that. Thanks, Deanna. So the first question, what benefits, this is just a quick word cloud just to get a sense of what you've kind of taken away around the dialogue. So what benefits do you think the Fork to Farm dialogues could bring to your place? You have an option just to type in a couple of words and we should see a cloud forming on the screen, and then we'll kind of move along to the question that Kate asked about, would you be interested to participate? And so in that case, what could this look like? How might you be involved? It has the option of, please share an email or another way of contacting you. And that's all private. I should just say that's not going to display on the screen.
We seem to have a technical problem.
Oh, I see. One sec.
Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Yes.
Quite hard to practice this sort of thing.
Aha, okay. Give me one sec. Did that help?
Yeah, we're good to
Can you
go.
go?
It's great.
Yeah?
Yep, perfect.
Good. Apparently all I had to do was press the button C on my keyboard. There you go. Who would have known?
Words starting to appear.
Hopefully, if the tech doesn't continue to fail me, you should be able, once you've submitted your words, to progress to the next question, which won't show up on the screen. It'll just be sent to us, and it's an opportunity for you to share whether you would like to take part and what that could look like, and drop your email so we can be in touch after the session.
Exciting, watching that in real time. Yeah, so that final question is just about what could happen in Wales, what would you like to see happening in Wales, do you want to get involved? Also, if something is already happening that doesn't necessarily use this terminology but feels similar, do let us know. It'd be really nice to join up all of those dots.
Yeah. Can I just check, is that question showing up okay for everyone, the second one? Yeah. Perfect.
Oh, brilliant. I'm too busy watching the word cloud.
They are exciting, and it's really exciting to see the sort of the big questions that come up there around collaboration, connection, knowledge, and progress. I like the kind of words around coherency and tolerance coming up as well. These are things we strongly hope to achieve too. Okay. I'll stop my share so you can bring the session to a close, Kate.
Okay, okay. Thank you. But I could watch that for hours. That's really intriguing. Brilliant. Well, you know, thanks all very much for coming with us on this little journey and engaging in good heart with this exercise. We didn't really know whether to worry that half the room would leave the minute we said we're going to ask you to do some dreaming. It's very impressive that you didn't. I will assume that if you want to some kind of follow-up, that you will have logged it either in the Menti or you can stick it in the chat right now. Just in the interests of time, I won't do a sort of final anyone want to pick up on any further points, but please do keep sharing there and keep chatting with each other. I just want to say thanks so much to Pete, Deanna, Sophie and your team for coming and sharing this exercise with us and sharing the kind of the Glasgow process more broadly with us. It's really, it's always tempting to just remain very Wales focused, and this sort of call to look upwards and outwards, and that particularly at this really important opportunity that will be coming our way in a year's time to shift some thinking. Well, the opportunity for shift is in the year leading up to it as well. It's really helpful and a really constructive flavour, I think, to bring to this discussion. So thanks very much for sharing that. I'm very happy to pick up with people afterwards anything that you've suggested you want follow up on, any broader follow up around food farming, Countryside Commission in Wales. I will stick my email in the chat and then you can all get in touch if you would like to be in touch in that capacity. And that said, unless Pete or team has any final words, I think we can sign off and be slightly ahead of schedule. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining in, everybody.
Yeah.
I love.
Thank you so much.